Hey, welcome to Al's Canoe Kalamazoo. We're continuing our build of this cedar strip canoe, and regular viewers of the channel know it's been a while since the last episode came out. The boat was first flipped off of the internal forms about 6 months ago, and winter weather has made progress pretty slow here in the garage. So I'm working on sanding the inside of the boat using my random orbital again with some 60 grit sandpaper. One thing that I had to get was this foam pad. Just adds another 1/2 inch or so, but it's very squishy. I still got the hook and loop on this side. So it just helps it conform to the concave shape of the boat a little bit better. And I'm just going around the whole inside with that. Works fine on the bottom too, even though it's a little flatter. It still works well for flat sanding. And we're just going through and trying to hit all the steps and hit all the glue spots and clean it up. So the goal for this kind of thing is you don't really want to have any light showing through. I've got quite a few spots. I mean, it's just going to happen unless you're really perfect with all your joints. I got a couple of really bright spotlights on the other side of the boat, so it's coming through really clear. But these areas actually already patched. These darker ones especially, I've already gone through and refilled that with epoxy on the other side. This brighter one here, my tape was in the way for my masking off to do some of these other areas. So this one actually has not been filled in. And it does look quite a bit brighter than these other areas. So we'll see, that'll probably darken up a little bit when I get around to patching that one. And then this is probably the biggest hole right here. So, but it is what it is. All right, well, this has been kind of a pain, but I masked off where the fillets are gonna go along the chine on the bottom of the boat. And I'm gonna do inside the stems as well, which was really annoying to get the tape on there. And it's pretty sloppy, but most of this you're never gonna look at anyway, so we'll hope for the best. As you can see, there's quite a bit of open space there where I probably just had the wrong angle cut on my inner stem to get the strips to sit nicely up against them, or I didn't put enough pressure on them or something. But anyway, I'm gonna pack that with some epoxy. Hopefully keep things nice and strong there. And I also need to go in and add a piece of skinny masking tape down the center of each of these stems all the way to this point here. So it'll be kind of a split fillet that goes along both sides of the stem. So I don't know, the blue looks kind of fun. Maybe I should just paint it that way when it's all done. All right, well, the fillets are in. I was really nervous about this part, but it wasn't that big of a headache. Does it look like garbage? Well, I don't know. You tell me, I guess. It is kind of just necessary with that chine and the gaps that I had in the stems, which are now totally filled in. It's going to give a much nicer surface for the fiberglass to latch onto and follow the curves. I just sanded this entire thing down with 100 grit on my random orbital, and just like the outside of the boat, I went through and I scrubbed it all down with a wet rag, just clean water, and that will raise the grain on the wood. And we'll go back through and we'll sand it down smooth one more time, and then we'll add some epoxy. Looking pretty sharp. Fiberglassing can be a bit of a nerve-wracking process. If you're going to do a build like this, try to make it as easy as you can. Proper lighting, reasonable temperatures, and having a few helping hands can make a big difference. If you have access to a world-class shop built exactly for this type of activity, great. Or if you can get immediate support from other experienced craftsmen, that'd be great too. If not, this process can still be done by a novice in less than ideal conditions, but do make sure your temperatures are within the recommended range for the entire curing time. Unfortunately, I had to prioritize the work over the filming, so I didn't get good footage, but we'll go over the aftermath of the fiberglassing. Okay, so to give an honest assessment of the inside of the boat, I did not do a very good job putting the epoxy on here. I tried a different method than the outside. Instead of rolling with the paint roller, I just poured it on and used a squeegee to spread things around. I tried to go back through after a little while, like 20 minutes is the goal, and squeegee off all the excess material. But even having done that, I have lots of thick spots and runs and gloopy areas and some thin spots as well. Not surprisingly, now that I look at it, I went through the epoxy that I had on hand really quickly. So I ran out after 2 coats. The first fill coat, or the first saturating coat with the dry fiberglass, and then 1 more fill coat on top of that. So it went on really thick, but very patchy as well. So I'm going to have a little bit of trouble with thin spots, and I'm going to have to sand the tar out of some thicker spots, which is disappointing. But I thought I wasn't getting much coverage with the paint roller, so I thought I would try just using the scrapers to spread it around. And I'm not happy with the result, but hopefully with a lot of sanding, this will still turn out okay. And then we'll probably go back through and do another coat of epoxy once I've got it mostly sanded through the thick spots. And we'll see. Go from there. All right, let me give a quick rundown of the fiberglassing on the inside of the boat since I didn't get very good footage of that. The first thing I did was to wet out the inner stem with epoxy and lay out a thin strip of fiberglass over that. And then I added a full sheet all over the inside of the boat. The ends were cut so that it was basically 2 flaps, one on either side of the boat that met in the middle. So I had to kind of cut that shape. We have this big kind of rounded shape, and we need to get all the way up in there with the fiberglass. So that was a bit of work getting that to shape. But the bigger problem was it just didn't stay adhered to the sides very well. Everything was sticking to my gloves, and I had a very hard time getting it all to lay flat. So it's a pretty rough job. You can see some bad ripples and some pointy spots sticking up, and even worse up here we have these huge ripples and gaps, spots that didn't go well at all. So I'm going to go through and grind those out with a Dremel with a round stone bit on that, and then we'll have to cover that back up again. So I'm just going to clean it up as much as I can. I already did the other side, and it's not perfect, but all the big ripples and waves are gone. And I'm probably going to do a little bit more work on this before I'm done grinding it out. And then I just need to wet it out with epoxy again, maybe add another strip of fiberglass if I want to go through that headache. Probably should for the strength, so we'll see. But right now I'm just going to focus on getting these all cleaned up. All right, now no one ever needs to know. So the bubbles from the first round of fiberglassing and epoxy, I just ground those out with a Dremel with a round stone. Left a bunch of these little holes. So then the next thing I did, I marked them with a little bit of tape, went through and patched it with some thickened epoxy. And we'll just sand that down when it's cured, see how it looks. Alright, I'm not going to breathe this stuff in for too long, but it's all coated with epoxy again. Nice layer all the way around. Looking pretty and glossy again. We're going to go back through and sand it all one more time. Get it nice and smooth before we do, well, a bunch of other stuff, and then ultimately some varnish. Hopefully that'll bring the color all right back out again. Alright, that's it for today. As always, thanks for watching. There's already a lot of footage ready to go for the gunnels and decks, so hopefully next episode will come out before too long. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, and we'll see you then.